Hey everybody, welcome to the weekly financial thing live stream. We are back as always every Thursday evening, 7:30 UK time, PM and 2:30 US Eastern time. And today we have a special guest as always. He has been here before on the stream. As you know, we have Michael Bristow, who is the head honcho, I like to call him, over at Crowdproperty, somebody that I've always enjoyed having a chat with. He's always very open and transparent. We have good chats about peer-to-peer lending. And if you want to hang out right to the end of the stream, we'll do a little bit of a news and cryptocurrency information at the end of the stream. And if you have questions or comments you want to ask Michael, he's always open to answering those. Just pop them in the chat. And this will be archived for those of you watching on the YouTube channel in the future who couldn't make it live. Then not a problem. You'll be able to watch this. So let me bring on the man himself here. Where is he? There he is. There he is. Mr. Michael Bristow. COVID hair and all. As we were chatting before about how, I always say he never ages. He always looks the same, but he said he's got the COVID hair. So thank you very much for joining us, Michael, on this Thursday evening. Appreciate that.
Always a pleasure, Lawrence. It's great to catch up. Thank you for having me.
Not a
And my hair.
problem. Not a problem. No, I actually think you kind of got the 1970s rock star. You just need your George Harrison guitar, and you'll be right up. But yeah, and if everybody can just hit that thumbs up, it helps get the stream on the silly YouTube algorithm, as we have to say those kinds of things to get. But just a quick hello and to everybody. Thank you for spending your evening. I know you have a lot of choices about what you could be doing tonight, and listening to us natter on, maybe not one of your favorite things to do, but you did decide to be here, so we very much appreciate this. And we'll get a lot of good information tonight for you, a lot of value, and hopefully, if you're not a customer or an investor through Crowdproperty, you want to give it a try. I will put the link in here. This is, by the way, just a disclaimer. This is not a paid thing. This is just something that I do with companies that I appreciate. And, Crowdproperty, I think, is one of the companies that is on the right path in the peer-to-peer lending world. And they have good statistics so far. So let's get to it. Last time you were with us, Mike, was about, I think it was October 2020. So we're coming up on about 8 months, if my counting is right. And we're seeing this, a lot of peer-to-peer companies have really been hammered by COVID and what's happened in the industry. COVID infections were kind of getting to the high point back then last year. And now we're seeing this, again, this uptick of what's going on with this new strain. Obviously, it's going to affect the finance world. It affects your builders. It affects the property side of things. And how have your operations changed since the last time that we spoke back in October 2020? Are you still acting remotely, or how is that going?
So, great question. So we actually opened back our office quite early on overall. So first lockdown in UK was 23rd of March, 2000, and we were open. We had the office open again in July that year. We had a bit of closure at the beginning of 2021, again aligned with lockdown. But there are a number of sort of insights that we gathered from lockdown 1.0, and that included number one, that we could be productive and communicative remotely, and I think everyone worked that out pretty quickly, and the Zoom share price reflected that. And then, but the thing that frustrated me was we'd lost an element of innovative edge. We're an innovative, disruptive business. We now have a brilliant. Our team is now 44 strong. And we resource well in this sector because it takes resource to do it well. And we have about a maximum of half in the office at the moment. That used to be a quarter during sort of higher periods of infection, and we love that. We buzz off it. Okay, it's really interesting now. We've recruited 24 people since COVID, since lockdown 1.0, and we are much better and more disruptive together. That our culture is so strong. Our office is in Birmingham, which doesn't require public transport. It's not like the tube network in London. And actually, do you know what people want? People they want to be around people. They want to be in the office environment. They want to be working closely with people. They want to be overhearing conversations and chipping stuff in. It's so much more rewarding. And you know, that's on the positive, innovative, disruptive side. But the sort of the downside, negative piece is that actually, you know, some of our younger staff struggled, and we saw sort of some mental health issues, and that's devastating to see, and that was the sort of the new information on the table to encourage us to keep the office open. All of it's so important to balance. We balance it with great safety and security, but our team is everything to us, and you know we also have a non-London cost base, so that team and the office and everything would cost us about double in London. So that gives us huge advantage because we can resource better, be a better lending business, have greater expertise, and do things properly. And that's very much underpinning our success.
And you are, if my memory recollects, Birmingham-based, the office, correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. I know we have some people coming
Birmingham,
on.
West Midlands, not Birmingham, Alabama, or
yeah. Yeah, I figured that one out. No, I know we have some people that are regulars on the stream. I think up in, I want to say Moseley, or where my granddad was from. So yeah, I know that the cost cutting has been a big deal, you know, for a lot of financial companies who had these big London offices. And even though what you say 44. So have you basically doubled your staff since the last time we spoke in October, or were you at about 20 at that point?
No, so we'd hired 24 since March 2020. Some of that was replacement. Very, very few regretted leavers in our business because we've got such a great, passionate team, and some of it was replacement of staff that wasn't quite working out. And so I think when we last spoke, we were probably around 32, something like that. And we've got a number of people joining. We're currently recruiting 2 executives onto our board as well. And you know, this is about building our business, looking ahead to what that should look like in terms of expertise, in terms of governance, in terms of you know, financial services rigor, as well as property rigor. For the 3, 4, 5 years and beyond. So we plan ahead. It's my nature. I used to be a strategy consultant. I think 3 to 5 years ahead, not tomorrow. So I'm constantly challenging ourselves, our board, on building a better business for the long run.
So I have to ask you this: I'm a small business owner. I have a huge staff of just myself and the dog. Is it stressful having to pay 44 people every week or every month? Did you feel that stress on your shoulders as a business owner, or do you just try not to think about it too much?
I have to mitigate that stress with data, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a data fanatic, and so what the data set that gives me reassurance on that? It's our pipeline, it's our lending, it's our application rate, it's our cost of acquisition, all of these elements that go into the best foresight of that business in the medium to long run, and we're all over that. And that is what gives us the confidence, and that forecasting and those lead indicators that give us the confidence to recruit ahead of that demand as well, which makes sure that our customer service, our rigor, and ultimately our credit underwriting is always top class.
Okay. real basic question for you. What's the current size of your loan book?
Well, I mean, there's so many different ways of saying this, right? So we funded £300 million worth of property projects, 297 million to be exact. We've agreed £181 million worth of facilities, and we have lent out the door at 141 million. Now, the interesting observation of that data is that the gap between the facilities agreed, 181, and the lent, 141. So therefore, there is 40 million further to fund within the existing agreements that we have with our borrowers, which is one element of helping me sleep at night, paying that salary base. And then also what we see in terms of application rating and growth. So the book has been growing significantly. However, our demand on the lender side has grown at an even greater rate, and now it's our biggest criticism is the challenge of people getting their money into our projects, because we've spent 7 years building a trusted brand with the rigor that is needed in this sector to deliver a quality performance.
And yeah, I think that's one of the comments that I get most about Crowdproperty is sometimes people are putting money in and it's taking a long time for the money to get deployed. How are you handling that balance between demand and supply, having too much money, not enough loans? Because obviously you want to make sure that your underwriting is quality and you don't want to just take on any old loan just to keep investors happy, right?
Yeah, we will never excuse me, we will never ever compromise on quality, and that's the quality in terms of the developers we work with and quality in terms of the projects they're undertaking. That is we will not go there. So what are we working on then? Well, it's very interesting because when you're running a marketplace business, which is effectively what a lender is, especially an online lending platform, peer-to-peer lending platform, you potentially have, very early on in the life cycle of such a business, you're flip-flopping between being short on the borrower side to short on the lender side to short on the borrower side to short on the lender side, and your marketing is going all over the place, your focus within the business is going all over the place, etc. Okay, but what we know is that we've built up this exceptional investor demand, okay, because we take the right attitude and the right process and the right governance and the right rigor. And we are working on three things as a business, okay? And that is, I would say 42 of our 44 staff are working entirely on this, which is immensely powerful to focus on just a couple of things. And that is the volume of applications we receive, the quality mix of those applications, and the conversion of those applications. And those three things multiply together, they compound together, and we believe that our activity can double, triple our cumulative lending rapidly, but it is always fundamentally underpinned by that quality measure. And I am the first to admit that we are pretty tight and pretty grumpy about our quality mix. And you're only a lender if you get the money back, right? The money out the door is nothing, right? You've got to get it back. You've got to deliver, and that's the crucial thing. So we've now paid back 82 million, and so we've demonstrated our perfect capital and interest payback track record of 82 million pounds worth of repayments.
And how long has that perfect record been over year-wise? How many years is that?
So lending since 2014.
So 8 years of zero losses and zero defaults. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah. So we've had some loans that have gone through technical default. Mm-hmm. So the FCA in this sector will define technical default as 180 days late. Mm-hmm. These are developments; they go late. What's almost certain with development finance, okay, is that borrower will not pay back on the day that you define at the start of the loan, right? Sometimes it will be earlier, sometimes it will be later, sometimes it will be quite a bit later, but we make sure that we have the security and we're all over that to ensure successful delivery and redemption of that loan.
And that's what we want to see as investors in this current climate. Let's talk about loan sourcing right now. Have you seen the demand for loan from borrowers looking for loans increase during COVID times, or has that really tapered off? And how are you finding new possibilities to give lenders more loans to invest in?
Yeah. So firstly, I mean, during COVID in the UK, so there's definitely greater credit risk exposure on consumer loans and SME loans than property development loans. And the reason I say that is that construction continued through COVID. Predominantly an outdoor activity. And yes, there was, especially on large sites, so huge sites, and there was quite public press about this. It's challenging to, manage a workforce of a couple of hundred having lunch, right? But on SME sites, our book continued, right? Now we shared a load of information between our developers around how you manage like personless delivery drop-offs, how you manage like just phasing of workmen and trades on site, and even sourcing materials, because that supply chain was compromised with less activity in general. But we shared because the fundamental thing here is that we're property people. We've been there, we've done it, we've been on sites, we've developed ourselves. Okay, we really fundamentally understand those challenges at a grassroots level, and we're able to work with our borrowers to do that and to share good practice through uncertain times. So that's sort of the first and foremost piece, and if you think big picture on a macro level, the UK government needs to encourage that to continue. Each home that gets built is worth around about £100,000 spend in the UK economy on materials, labour and services. It's a fundamentally important sector, and that's before you go near sufficient UK house building. So that's sort of the big picture context. Now, there's no doubt that in the market overall, there were fewer construction starts last year. Okay, that's not surprising. Even though construction could continue, there were various constraints on it. But the more pronounced constraint was actually on financing those projects. So what we saw, and I've argued for many years about the power of diverse sources of capital, and I'll come on to defining that in a second. And diverse source of capital, I didn't want or expect a pandemic to prove my point, but it proved my point that a load of traditional sources of development finance, banks, non-bank lenders, they may have their source of capital, maybe a single wholesale source of capital. And that single source of wholesale capital might come from a large asset manager or pension fund that across their other capital exposures is exposed to equity market volatility, for example, in March, April, May last year, right? So they say, right, pause on equity, pause on debt. Right, and that meant they became immediately unreliable lenders, right? So they were reneging on offers, and they were even, which is the shocking element, pausing drawdowns or stopping drawdowns to projects that were in flight. Okay, and that scuppers the project basically. So we picked up a load of those. We picked up a load of projects that were high quality under tighter criteria, that it was right for them to proceed and they could proceed safely. And that meant that our reputation has step changed within the market, because we have proven to be a more reliable source of capital than traditional sources of finance. And that's before you go anywhere near how transactional and non-customer centric those traditional sources are. So that's driven further step change in our application rate. We saw 285 million pounds worth of direct applications last month, and that ensures that we are seeing a significant portion of the market and can choose the projects that we want to fund through a rigorous quality assessment.
How many, if you had to take a guesstimate, how many loan applications do you get a month that don't get approved as a percentage? Is it a high amount, I would imagine?
So around about, well, I mean, it's a stage-gated process. So we will typically ding 40% of those off the bat, and on whatever reason. It's probably 30% more like, and then a further proportion won't go on to happen. The vendor loses that project, and then a further percentage we will see further down the line. There are some challenges on title, or there's an issue, or costs. Once digging deeper, if we get a listed building conversion and they've underbaked costs, and our underwriters spot that, and then that actually compromises the viability of the project. So there's loads of sort of reasons why projects go away, but the speed of that, the stage gating of it, the data that we put behind it, the analytics we put behind it. One of the really interesting things actually is we've now seen £6 billion worth of projects. And we funded, as I said, 181 million of facilities. And we're now, that data set is uniquely large. And we're now training machine learning models to help us workflow prioritize on likelihood of success and all of this, because our data set is uniquely large. We're not simply buying market share for brokers. We're going to root source of developers and building up an incredible data set that gives us more insight and more reference point to make better decisions in the market.
Tell me, so you're probably one of the few platforms out there that's doing anything property-based lending that has managed to keep the default levels so low, and especially going through COVID. If you've been able to do that too, that's a pretty amazing thing. How have you able to do that when other platforms have really failed in that department? Is it just loan quality underwriting from the beginning that's enabled you to do that? What is that about?
Yeah, I mean, there's a load of contributors to that. There's definitely initially, assessing the project, but assessing the borrower in particular. We place a lot of priority on assessing the borrower. The best project in the world on paper, with the easy bit of assessing numbers, could be stuffed up by the human being, right? So we really need to understand the ambitions, the motivations, the commitments of that borrower. And things that we look for are they on a journey? Are they building a long-term property business, or have they just stumbled across a site and fancy a dig at property developing? It's fundamentally committed people. Okay, and that's because it's a project. Stuff will go wrong. Okay, there is no doubt. No project happens without stuff going wrong. Okay, but what we want to see is that we've risk managed. From our perspective, significant things that could go wrong, and that we've understood that if less significant things go wrong, then that borrower has the commitment, the motivation, the ambition to sort that out quickly and get on, right? And that's fundamental, right? And you can't algorithm that. You cannot algorithm it. That is where we have human-to-human relationship building and to get to know that individual. So that's one thing. Now, interestingly, that drives stronger relationships. So we get to know that borrower better. And actually, what they really value is that we're property people. And they'll phone us up. They'll say, hey, look, this has gone wrong. Have you seen this before? And it's like, yeah, don't worry. Yep, that's right. Just think about it like this, or do this, or whatever. Or, yes, that's a problem. Okay, we're here to help. We'll be on site tomorrow. Let's crack it together because it's both our problem, right? That is a fundamentally different relationship to Nobody ever phoned Lloyd's Bank and said, "Hey, I've got this problem on my dev site."
No.
Right? Okay, because you probably wouldn't speak to a person. Even if you got a person, it'd be an administrator ticking boxes, right? It's a fundamentally different relationship. So that enables us to be very clear about what's going on the site, right? So we've got that insight, we've got that grassroots expertise, and we've got that communication channel open, right? Now, as I said earlier, do things go late? Yes, they do, and a number of our loans have gone late, right? The answer to that is not what RBS did in 2009, which was to repossess and fire sell, right? That drove down the market big time. Okay, the answer is usually, not always, we take decisions based on the best likelihood of the outcome of redemption of that loan and interest. Okay, but it is often that project continues, it gets increased scrutiny and oversight. We work together with that borrower, okay, and we increase the chances of successful redemption. And that strategy, and we have taken things to receivership and successfully recovered everything, including capital, interest, and penalty interest for our lenders when things go late. Okay, so we've proven all of those things, and we've proven our case-by-case decision making around that, and that is fundamentally because we've been there ourselves. We really get it. My co-founder Andrew, I think I've mentioned this before, is 36 years RICS qualified, right? He's built millions and millions of square foot himself, okay? And he is fundamentally grumpy, right? So he is the ideal person to be heading up that property team, to be approving things to go to investment committee, to be supporting the monitoring of those, and to be getting ultimately to the redemption of those loans, the payback of capital to our lenders.
I have to give it a little applause there. Let's talk about interest rates and what lenders are going to possibly receive in the future. I think we've seen a bit of a dip down as time has passed, but that's happened really across all of the peer-to-peer lending sector. What do you think is going to happen as far as rates being paid to investors in the future? Is it going to remain constant, or do you see that falling? Maybe rate probably not rising at the moment, but
so we pay our lenders between 7 and 8%, and that is entirely related to the rate that the borrower pays. Okay. Now, previously, most of our loans went out the door at 8%. Okay, and our observation there was that we were losing projects that had a lower risk profile, for example, a lower loan to value on that project. So we needed to be more competitive because they had a different and lower risk profile. So we said, well, we will therefore compete a bit more on price and offer that out at a lower rate. But it is fundamentally related to the risk profile. This is not. It is not a capital supply driven reduction in rate. This is to enable us to compete, and we are totally transparent, unlike most in the market, about our averages in terms of what the borrower rate is and what the lender rate is. They are pegged. Okay, so where we are assessing the risk that is lower. That's a lower loan to value often, or higher, extremely high experience of that developer, or whatever the many dimensions that we price on. Okay, the lenders are getting a fair reflection of that rate, that risk-based rate, that market-tested rate that the borrower is paying, and that is important. You need to know, you need to understand on a platform the difference between what the borrower is paying and what the lender is getting, and the average on the platform. Because are you getting a fair slice of that? Okay, because it's a very different equation. You as a lender are getting 7%, and the borrower is paying 9%, versus you as a lender getting 7%.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that right now. So you have these two different statistics: borrower contract rate and borrower actual rate. What is the difference between those? They're a little bit different.
4% a month. Okay, and that destroys the project quickly, and the borrower walks away. Okay, you've got to have a sensible stick level that encourages that payback, right? And so some of our loans that go late, they incur that extra borrower fee. Now we, not all platforms, then say, well, if it's gone late, that's inconvenient to lenders, so we will then offer them an increased rate, and that's typically plus 2 percentage points. And so that's when you see, right, the lender contract rate is 7.89%. So it's broadly on contract rate, broadly 2.1% of difference, pretty much 2 percentage points worth of difference between the borrower contract rate and the lender contract rate. And then the actual rate that people get, the borrowers are paying about 7.5, and the actual rate the lenders receive about 8.4. Okay, and that's interesting. And when a loan goes late, it's quite interesting. We get some people saying, "Oi, the loan's gone late," and other people saying, "Great, the loan's gone late. I'm getting an extra 2%," because that latter part of people know that we are managing that loan tightly at that stage, and have ample security to get redemption on it. So actually, overall, our platform returns over our life cycle are 8.36%.
And so you're pretty excited about this Australian expansion. Now, sell me on this, okay? Because my dad always told me, stick to what you know. And when you try to expand into areas that you don't know, things can get a little bit bumpy. So what's going on with this Australia expansion, and how did that come about for you?
So it's very interesting. So we've been working on it for 2 years. Okay. And it definitely hasn't been as a distraction, because my background, it sounds like a long-winded start of the story, right? It's not. I'm actually Australian, but my background is that I worked in strategy consulting for many years, for 18 years. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I've worked with many private equity funds that buy businesses and then look at levers to grow those businesses. And as part of that, I've done so many international expansion strategies for private equity owned businesses. Okay, so I've kind of got the textbook in my head, right, of what to do and what doesn't work and what not to do. Mm-hmm. And this was actually so it's a known, very attractive market. We've done all the data analytics on that and other markets, and it was high in our sort of theoretical prioritization. Okay, but then it's about the people. It's about finding the right partner down there, because you've got to have a local team. They've got to be incentivized. They've got to be great, and that's hard to find. And so it's a bit of a convergence of opportunity of saying that's an interesting market, number one, on many levels, on the property side, on the development finance side, and on the investment side, and also the banking environment about attitude to lending to property developers. Very similar market dynamics. The proposition is very similar there. And the right team introductions. So our CEO down there, very talented guy. He has already founded, grown, and sold an insurance marketplace business. Okay, he knows how to do this, right? That was a successful exit for him, and this is his new baby. And my introduction to him was actually through a school friend who's been based around Sydney for 15 years, and you piece all of these things together, Okay, the analytics, the market dynamics, and the right people and the right team, and you can structure a very, very interesting proposition for that market. And so they sit on our technology, and we underwrite with them. They've got the local market expertise, we've got the persistence processes, etc. And my word, if we knew back in 2014 what we know now about how to make this business work, my God, would be huge, right? And that IP is so powerful. So the market on many levels is a few years behind the UK, and so it's a great opportunity, and we think we'll grow to the size we are here in the UK in half the time we've done that.
Okay. I know one other thing you'd mentioned to me that you're super excited about is you've had some record lending months, and you've really grown that part of the business. Go ahead, tell me about that.
Yeah.
What these record lending months have been for you.
So May. Actually, I think we've just beaten one of them in June. So it sort of feels like most months are. But in May, we lent £8.3 million. And so that's money out the door. That's not facilities funded or agreed. 8.3 million lent, 7.5 million of redemptions, i.e. paybacks. And then a record month of applications in. So £285 million. Right. And it's that number that is important for investors right now, because it's competitive getting in. But we had record originations, record applications coming in. And actually in our pipeline right now, progressed opportunities in our pipeline total £322 million. So, I've talked ever since projects started funding very quickly, and frustrations that, by the way, I always get phone calls from either my mother or my wife who can't get into projects. So I'm always in the bad books with them. And we take the pain of getting in very, very seriously. We are acutely aware of it. And not least for the hammering our investor relations but also, we are committed to resolving this. And the way we're doing it is by driving up applications, is by driving up quality, is by driving up conversion, and bringing more projects to the table, but always on that quality threshold. So that's great news. That's great news for the for what's coming. And we're making a number of dedicated hires, and our strategic focus is exactly on that side, and that will be hugely impactful over the next 12 months. And then June, I think we lent £8.8 million. So that's another record month. The other thing, just to sort of allay a couple of fears on the investors' side as well, you'll probably have noticed, but in our main numbers there, 8.3 million lent, 7.5 million paid back. Now, many lenders are saying, "Oh my God, I just keep on getting money paid back." Now, I mean, firstly, we should all recognise that as a good thing. And secondly, that's slightly accentuated right in the minute. So May and June have been quite high redemptions because of the stamp duty holiday in the UK. And so people rushing through purchases to get those. So we've had a lot of redemptions. And that's exacerbated this frustration, right? Again, that will drop off somewhat for July. And I think our sort of, sort of expected levels going forward will be circa 10 million lent each month, and circa 4 to 5 million paid back each month, and that's reflective of our tree. So there will be more opportunity coming on stream, short term, medium term, and especially long term, as all of these things come together.
Okay. Let's do a little Q&A if that's okay. We've got quite a few questions, and people are asking in the stream. So I don't want to keep you here for 2 hours like last time, but
It's great fun.
we'll try to get through some of these, and then at the end, I kind of want to get your feedback on what you think the current state of the peer-to-peer lending industry is, because we've seen, some problems. The FCA seems to be really tightening down on giving out new regulation permissions to new peer-to-peer. We're not really seeing many new companies come into market at all. So I want to get your feedback on what you think the future of peer-to-peer lending. But let's do some Q&A. Again, if you have a question, anybody out there, just pop it in the chat and I'll try to get to as many as I can. Couple of comments that I'm seeing. I don't think you can see the chat, but there's about 40 people watching live right now. We've gotten a lot of requests for a secondary market. I think we heard this last time, a way to be able to get out for some reason if people want to be able to have some liquidity. What are your thoughts on that right now with the secondary market?
It's a great question. It's a very complex question, actually. This is the area that the FCA are going to crack down on, okay? And they already are in the discussion paper that platforms have responded to recently. This is really important to be wary of, okay? So amongst the many arguments against secondary markets are an impression of false liquidity. Mm-hmm. If you want to sell, there's got to be a buyer, right? How do you drive that? Is it on discounting or is there natural liquidity there or whatever? Just because a platform has a secondary market doesn't mean you can sell something, right? So that's firstly. Secondly, it's quite interesting. If you think about where those secondary markets generally started, it's in longer term loans, it's in SME loans, it's in consumer loans. They're typically 3 to 5 year loans. Our loans, if you, by part loan, average 14 months. So actually, is it such a burning need for people to get out? It's not as extreme as consumer and SME, but I'm not taking anything away from the requests and the feedback that we get. Okay. Next dimension is that I'm just going to embellish a little bit more on that pricing point. Okay, how do you price that? What's your pricing policy? Number one. So, do you allow discounting? Is there enforced discounting? What fees are involved? All of this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. There are pros and cons of every single permutation of all of these elements. Then there's availability considerations. Okay, at what point do you allow people to sell or not sell? At what point, what information prevents that? Okay, because someone on the sell side might have information from the platform about a particular loan that then is put out onto the marketplace. Okay, and more nuanced than that, at the micro level, is, well, what if someone lives nearby that development site and they don't see much activity, and they say, right, I'm going to sell that, live near that development site, buys that. At what point is this availability linked to information asymmetry, linked to sort of criteria around it? And all of these points are points that the FCA are scrutinizing where platforms offer secondary markets. And there are a lot of questions in the latest Dear Board notes from them. So we've always sat and said, right, we're not the complexity of all of those elements and the uncertainty on a regulatory basis make this a minefield. Mm. So now we shouldn't, as a business, let regulatory rule everything, right? Because there's two things. There's what we're allowed to do in regulation and how that could shift. And then there's customer demand, right? And that is the challenge of us as a business and any business, to balance those two things, to make sure there's good service of customer and it's very much inside the regulations, right? And so interestingly, when we go out to survey our investors, secondary market is quite a long way down the list. So now that's interesting. There are other things that we are working on that are high up that list, and so we take great heed and listen very carefully to every bit of consumer feedback that comes in, whether it's an email to our platform, whether it's a comment on wherever, or whether it's through our surveys. Okay, we are constantly analyzing this. I just love poring all over this stuff, and so we are really thoroughly considering all of these points. Okay, and at the moment, secondary market is not on our immediate roadmap. And then the final point I'll add to this, okay, is the natural prioritization with the business. So I put it back to our lenders and say, would you rather our business focused on building a secondary market, or use that resource to find more high quality projects? Okay, and that is how we think as a business in terms of prioritization of what people want, and that is of higher priority.
And I don't know for anybody that's not watching, or anybody that is watching who doesn't know what a secondary market is, because I just assume people do. That's just a way to buy and sell loan pieces instead of just buying them when they come live. But sometimes I'm not sure people really realize how difficult it is technically to implement a feature into a system, and a secondary market is a very complex and advanced thing to implement. But
and that's definitely right. I mean, take our auto invest product. I mean, if you count up all of the edge cases, right, it's actually a very, very complex algorithm. But we do override that complexity. We have the capability to deliver that, and that's all in house and perfectly controlled, and it's in our software engineers are in our Birmingham office, employed by us, not offshore, not outsourced, anything like that. It is all with perfect control. But it's a lot of the secondary market pieces around policy, and there are pros and cons of whichever way you go policy wise.
Right. Okay, we'll try to get through these questions. Sue Cooper asked, what is the minimum amount that you can invest in one of these property loans?
So as on a self-select, so picking an individual project, it's £500. And through our auto invest, you can instruct it, the algorithm, to invest as little as £50 across projects. And look, good practice in this sector, in any investment sector, is diversification. And if I'm to, and I'm in no way, shape or form belittling the pain of people trying to get into projects at the moment, okay, but if I was to pick one benefit, one pro out of that, okay, is that people are much more diversified across many, many, many more loans. And look, at some point, and this is it's not on the cards at the moment at all, at some point there will be some interest loss or a bit of capital loss. I mean, it's all first charge secured, so it wouldn't go to zero. But if where you're well diversified, okay, the impact on that on your portfolio returns is minimal. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I cannot emphasize that enough, the importance of that, and that is one side benefit of the current situation. But I'm not belittling the feedback and the pain I get, that I really understand of people that are struggling to get in.
Yeah, totally understood. Here's a little bit of feedback to John Day. Said, why do you decide to have 2 or 3 loans launch in a single day? Makes it a bit tricky if you're trying to control the lender's anticipated allotment size.
Yeah, so again, there's sort of, we debate this a lot. It's great. There's so many dimensions of proposition in this business, and my chairman always accuses me of overthinking everything, but that's a good thing, right? So it just means I work too hard. If we have, say, 6 loans in a week, right? We don't launch on a Monday because we don't want to launch the information on a Sunday, It's kind of like we like to keep things to the working week, not least for investors. And we launch a project typically at 10 a.m. And that is just how we've always done it, and people have got used to that. So by definition, we've got 4 days that we can launch projects. Okay, and if we've got 6, then we have to double up, right? So because we're getting more and more loans coming on. And the way we're currently operating that is because, I mean, one way would be if on a Wednesday, say, we had to launch 2 projects, right? We could launch one at 10 a.m. and one at 2 p.m., right? And in our book, our conclusion on that is, well, that's inconvenient for people. So our view then is to launch one at 10 a.m. and one at 10 past 10 a.m. Okay, and we don't launch them at the same time because people can opt out. It's our skip next loan functionality on our auto invest product. Okay, so if someone's in auto invest, they find that convenient, but they see a loan they don't particularly want to be in, they may skip that next project. If you launch those concurrently or within seconds, you can't actually activate that feature, and people do appreciate that feature. So that was the conclusion on 10 and 10 past 10, and then last week we did 10 past 10 and 20 past 10. So we had 3 launching within 20 minutes of each other. And look, it took a lot of debate internally. I mean, I'd love to hear what the gentleman's suggestion or his preference would be in terms of launching.
Yeah. John, if you have any feedback on that, what you'd like to see, I think he was maybe saying, that's a long discussion, isn't it? Because you're never going to please everybody all the time.
Yep.
But I was always thinking, why not 11 minutes past 10? I like to throw a little spanner in the works, make people really think about these times. But I totally understand. Let's move on from that one. Let's see. Why? I'm just right. There's a lot of questions here. Okay, this is a good one. Mr. Philip Waters has asked, does everybody on AutoVest get a share of the loan, or do some lenders miss out on occasions?
Right. So AutoVest, again, there are so many different policies you could apply here. But if your AutoVest is on, then you and it's got funds in, then everyone in that situation gets a share of that loan. What happens is that, say, for example, the auto invest allocation is, say, and it's typically around sort of half of a loan launch to give a reasonable balance for auto invest and self-select style investors, right? So, say, for example, a loan's £1 million, and you get £500,000 allocated into auto invest, but there is demand for £2 million. I'm just using random numbers. In that auto invest, and everyone will get 25%. Mm-hmm. Okay, but with a bit of complexity there, because typically, and this is not always the case, it sometimes, occasionally varies. Okay, but we will always do this on a fair basis. Okay, is that we don't want to fragment people so that people get like £10 into a loan. So there's a floor of 50. Okay, so all the people get 50, okay, and then the rest is allocated out anyone that would get 50. So it's all as fair as it possibly can be on all sort of angles. But so again, it's challenging to please absolutely everyone.
Right.
But we do this on a fair allocation and proportion basis.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Paul Bagworth, and don't go too deep into this because this could be a very long answer, but he's saying if you, and I think I just want to share this screen for a second here. I think I might have muted you, and I want to make sure that I do this. Just give me 1 second because I want to make sure that I do this correctly. Okay, I think I have you good on this one. I'm showing the statistics page here where you actually show the borrower rate of the what the borrowers are paying in interest and what the lenders actually receive. And we see 9.92 is the borrower contract rate and 7.89 is the lender contract rate. So we have about a 2% spread between the loans and what the investors are being paid. So Paul's question is, let me pull this up, it's a good one. Margins sound tight if you're talking about just the 2% contractual rates between borrower and lender payments. How are you making money?
Yeah, great question. Platform stability is really, really important. We're a profitable business. Our first 12 months cumulative profit we hit that in May 2020. Our year ending March 21 is a profitable financial year. And we've worked out, we've got the sustainable economics. Okay, so there's the spread on the loan that we get at the end of the loan, and B, the an arrangement fee for striking that contract with borrower of anywhere between 1.5 and 2.5, maybe occasionally 3% on small loans. So there are two sources of income, and the most important thing then is to have a cost base that fits that, and hence, we have a real advantage of having a non-London cost base, and we can resource the business well. So hopefully that's a pithy enough answer, but I could go on about this for hours.
I know you do like talking about this stuff, but here's a good bit of good feedback for you, because I know it's nice to hear. You're going to get some gripes here, as that's the nature of the business. Stephen Hill says he's mostly happy with Crowdproperty, less time on manual lending, smaller percentage on auto invest, but good track record. Not surprised more people are joining. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yes. And let's see what else here. Another nice compliment. Philip says he's had to email and telephone Crowdproperty recently. The customer service was excellent. So, hey, look at that. You're getting some good feedback on that.
We place really high priority on that, helping people out. We get quite a few calls we work very, very closely with our borrowers, but also we're here to help on lender side. And so if you've ever got any questions, there's Lucy, there's Freya, and there's Jonathan in our lender services team, and they're great. They can really help people out.
Okay. Chris Morn has said, since you're growing so much, and we've kind of already discussed this, that can you guarantee that the same standards will remain in underwriting? I mean, I think we've already talked about them, and you just deny a lot of applications, and even now the demand is high. So
this is the fundamental, right? And this is what we work very hard. This is why we recruit ahead of growth, because we can forecast that. It's so important. Our property and credit team, a team of 15, hugely talented, deep expertise, very experienced. We're constantly bringing new people into that and bringing them on board and understanding the processes and the rigor we go through. So many governance checkpoints, very defined processes, very defined ways of working, and our control on that is really really tight. And just I'm going to take us up a level actually. Our chairman is years in asset management. Was an executive director of Morgan Stanley, COO at New Star Asset Management and Hermes Asset Management, and then CEO of ESF Capital. He brings amazing asset management expertise. And then our other non-exec, chap called Mark Stevens, who basically grew Aldermore to IPO as deputy CEO, was CEO of Harrods Bank and Attica Bank, and brings the banking expertise. They both sit on our risk committee. They are really grumpy as well, and they bring the rigor and the depth and experience they bring to us mitigating risk in our business is so powerful. And so all of the stats on processing volumes and per member of staff and all of this, we're all over it. because this makes or breaks the lending business, and we've seen too many break. This is what we are great at.
Alan Toombs says he's very happy with Crowdproperty. He thinks there's a number of aspects on the website that could be improved to help lenders keep track of their investments. And I think I saw another comment about that. Somebody mentioned he finds it difficult to see when the loan is actually ending. Maybe that information is maybe buried in the documents. But are you working on the UI, on the user interface of making it more user-friendly?
Yeah, UX UI is an art, not a science. It's never perfected. We get this feedback. We understand it. We know there's some things we're working on around messaging systems, around communication clarity on individual loans and things like that. Interestingly, we sometimes we get feedback that's saying this is great, and then the same thing is like this is not great. And we're listening all the time. There's definitely some work we are doing, and it's on our roadmap. Again, and just to caveat that a little bit, okay, this is not something that's going to be done tomorrow nor next week. Okay, this is something that we are working on for 2021, because tomorrow and next week and next month, okay, we are working very, very hard on volume and acquiring more investment opportunities, because that's the biggest point of feedback at the moment. It doesn't mean that we don't think it's important. It doesn't mean we don't listen. It means we plot it out very rigorously on our roadmap, okay, based on the feedback of what people really place highest priority on, and at the moment that is loan volume, obviously of the quality standard that you expect from Crowdproperty.
Okay, let's see what else. What else do we have here? Tony, this is more of a comment. I have 2,000 coming back in 3 to 6 months. My greatest concern is how long will these funds sit there not earning while being set in auto invest at £50 a time. That's going to take a long time, 50 into £2,000, about 40 projects, right? How can that be addressed too? Well, I mean, it's all about demand and supply, isn't it, at the end of the day? Or maybe setting that auto invest a little bit higher. I'd imagine some of the loans have bigger, they offer larger amounts, so. But if you are setting it to 50, obviously it's going to take you a while to get into 40 projects, but then you are very diversified.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly all of those points. What we do find that's quite interesting is that people get to a sort of a deployed position. So if they say, right, I want 10 grand into Crowdproperty, the pain is getting the 10 grand in the first place, because if it's over time, then when it's paid back is spread as well, right? And so you get paid back, and it can go back into a loan. So it's actually the first deployment that's typically the sort of challenging bit, unless it's paid back from when you're able to get a bit more in, and now you're facing that first deployment challenge or phasing again. There are a few levers that you can pull, like you've mentioned. We're working hard to bring more, obviously, and look, it's again, not belittling the problem. It is diversifying your portfolio, but and then that so take. I always mention her. So my mother, who invests, right, and it's quite funny actually. I was talking about her in a webinar I was doing. And she texted me afterwards saying I was actually listening to that webinar. So it's slightly awkward. But anyway, so the way she looks at it is exactly that. So she puts her ISAs in, okay, and so she puts the money in, right, and what she now sees is it's almost like a sort of a weekly income. Or fortnightly income that she gets out, and each week or fortnight she says, right, am I going to put that back into a loan, or am I going to take it out and use it? And that's how some people think. Lots of people think differently about it, but we're going to bring you more projects.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's more projects, expansion, growth. It's always the big dilemma for every
More
single
projects,
company.
same quality.
Every single company goes through this, and I will say one thing: you do not want. We won't even mention the name of what happened, where the lender supply was just too great, and the loans were just increasing, and then the whole platform imploded just to keep lenders happy, so they could get their money deployed. Because capital preservation is the biggest and most important thing when we're investing. Is there any plans to provide a way for people to get paid monthly on interest versus at the end?
So there's two things on this. Firstly, you need to match, the fundamentals are you need to match cash flows to the cash flows of the borrower, right? In property development, you spend money, right? And at the end, you sell stuff and you pay that money back. They're the fundamental cash flows of the borrower, right? However, a number of our loans, and it is on a loan by loan basis, will either be serviced, so have a monthly income stream, and maybe where there's a bridge or something like that then turns into a development loan, or there's a revenue generating asset. So for example, a project that's been completed that might be a co-living or HMO development that is income producing whilst it produces the track record to then get it refinanced, then in that situation you might get some serviced interest from the borrower, right? And the other dimension is that also sometimes gets you monthly income is that we will sometimes also retain interest in the loan. Okay, so we will effectively retain an amount that is representative of the interest that the borrower is paying, and there are a number of psychological reasons why this happens. And number one is you don't want to borrow the money for a site and then just sit on it for ages. Okay, if you retain interest on it, then you don't increase the exposure on that. If they don't crack on, so that's a bit of a carrot or stick, whichever way you want to call it, to make sure that property development actually goes ahead, continues, and there's an urgency on that. So typically that information, whether it's serviced or retained and therefore paid monthly, it will be in the loan details, each loan details, so some loans are, some loans aren't.
Okay. Let's see here. Somebody called a carful, which is an interesting name, has said, let me put this up on the screen. Do you know of any pension providers that will let me invest in Crowdproperty in one of their SIPs? So, which is a retirement SIP.
Yeah, there are a number of them, both SaaS and SIP pension providers. So SaaS pensions is where you're a director of a company, so not everyone's in that situation, but that's the most flexible type. There are a couple of SIP providers. The best thing is to drop our customer services team a line, and it's not because I just don't want to give you a half answer on some providers, because that could look like a recommendation. We've got a certain way of articulating that, of the number of SIP providers that we work with.
So call Crowdproperty or email them and they will help you with that, Carful. Is Crowdproperty Australia going to be called the same thing? Is it going to be branded as the same name?
It's Crowdproperty, crowdproperty.com.au. It's live. It's running. It's funded about 2.3 million Aussie dollars of projects so far. So it's been up for 7 weeks. And there's a good stream of projects that have come in. I see those because I'm part of the investment committee that will see those projects. It's as I say, it's going to be quite a bit of volume there because there's a lot of demand both sides of the marketplace in Australia for exactly that.
Okay. Couple more questions. Let's see. Here's a very broad question. Maybe you can give us a short answer to this. But Chris Mon says, "What can you tell us about the future plans for Crowd Property and what your expansion plans are?" I think I know the answer, but go ahead. Can you say that? Can you even tell us?
I'm awful at this because I keep these things close to our chest until we actually deliver them.
Okay.
There's some really exciting plans. There are a number of propositional sort of big changes on both lender side and borrower side we're working on. However, the big thing is a focus on more projects, and that's what I can commit to, and that is a big impetus and a strategy within the business at the moment. And the rest will be interesting, I guarantee you. And I'm sorry to come up with such an awful answer.
That's okay. Stay tuned. I'm sure people will be
Indeed.
happy. Sue Cooper said, "If I open an IFISA, could I lose all of the money or just some of it?" Well, Sue, it's an investment. Your capital is at risk. It's not FSCS protected, so doubtful, we'll say. But yes, there is a possibility that you can lose your money. So I answered that one for you. I gave you a break.
Look, that's exactly right. Capital is at risk. We work hard to ensure that doesn't happen, and we've got a good track record.
There you go. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. This is an interesting. Well, do I even intend to do that? Okay. This is a good question. Paul New says he's a small investor. Got invested in the AutoVest. I know I always ask this, but what are the defaults and how successful are you at recovering them?
Again, on our stats page, we show that we have had in our entire history and the FCA defined technical default, as I mentioned earlier, of a development loan being 180 days late. In our history, we have had 8 of those. We have recovered and paid back in full capital and interest and penalty interest, 6 of those, and we have 2 currently outstanding that we don't have concern by, but we are working those through. So that's probably the most information that is relevant to that question. But as I said, not only capital is at risk, but it's extremely unlikely that a developer is going to pay back on the day that loan contract ends. Sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's later. On average, it's slightly later. Okay, you will get compensated for that in a slightly increased interest rate during that late period, because we know it's an inconvenience. But we are very good at recovering. We make good property decisions in the best interest of recovering that money, capital, interest, penalty interest.
Okay, another little bit of feedback. Alan Stratford said the biggest issue with the website, he finds it very difficult to find updates for specific loans. They are buried in unsearchable messages rather than being linked and easy to find. So again, that's just the UI, the user experience. Yeah. I'm sure you're kind of working on making that better.
Exactly. And we hear that, and that's on the roadmap to improve that messaging system, because that searchability, especially now people are in more and more loans and better diversified. We get it that is our messaging system does not make it easy to find those updates. We do place high importance on communication and keeping people updated, especially where something might be running late or we're taking action on something. So we do communicate. That's really important. But we totally understand that point, Alan, and that is on our roadmap well and truly.
Okay. Albert Adams says to Mike, "Why are you slow to start loans when we've allocated our cash? And why are there no loans for the next 7 days?" So the first one I would imagine is just about when things get drawn down.
It's property, right? So phase 1 loans are almost always involving well, they always involve a solicitor because it's the start of a facility, and it typically involves a transaction. Now, those of you who have bought a house have probably been disappointed at a couple of things. Number one, it's moved around a lot, the close of that transaction. And number two, solicitors take quite a long time with things. So, look, this is a lot out of our hands, right? We will only ever release funds for a transaction when we are entirely comfortable and the complete legal due diligence process has been completed. So there is a lag. It is because it's a transaction. If it was a small business loan or a consumer loan, you can just release those funds, right? On signing of those contracts, but there's not a big legal process associated with it. But legal process plus transaction, it's actually quite surprising how many times something comes up on the title, and we're typically aware of it, but there are things to finalize. So we will raise when sort of 95% of the legals are done, but we're not going to close until 100% of the legals are done. Again, we recognize that. Again, I've personally, and this is my meddling consulting background, I've personally been into our solicitors to look through their processes and work with them to really refine processes, make sure we're asking the questions at the right point, et cetera, et cetera. Again, we know that there's an inefficiency here, but this is a deal by deal inefficiency where something happens. Follow-on loans are much more predictable. Because we can start that quicker after the raise. So if that sort of impact on cash drag is very important to you, look at phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 loans.
Sorry, that's me muting. Mike Powell has asked,
yes, okay.
What is your view on the FCA consultation on treating peer-to-peer development loans as speculative illiquid securities? Do you expect any impact on Crowdproperty's loans?
First and foremost, we don't expect impact on Crowdproperty if they decide to classify like that. We'll come on to why it's wrong in a second, but because actually vast majority of our lending is institution, high net worth, sophisticated investor classifications. So that's sort of first point. I think a lot of platforms will struggle if they come down and ban restricted investment and marketing. And that's certainly something to watch out for, especially the small platforms. This will make it uneconomic, etc. And they will struggle because they'll lose a lot of their custom. We're in great shape on that, but it's actually surprising. So they were arguing around property development loans around they see the opportunity for property developers to arbitrage and effectively replace mini bonds funding by which obviously had the huge bad press around LCF and various others, and them perceiving, is there some arbitrage there that basically replaces mini bonds with peer-to-peer lending in property development? And it's not. It's so fundamentally different because you're securing against, yes, you take debenture from the company, but you're securing against the asset. Okay, mini bonds were effectively kind of loans into the company, right? And then equally, when we're releasing, a really important thing to do, okay, this is sort of property development lending 101, right, is never give the developer all the money at the same time, right? Yeah. It's because they'll go and buy a Porsche, right? Mm-hmm. And if they do well and they do a good job, maybe there's a Porsche in it for the end, but right. They've got to do a load of work before they do that, right? And there's an element of mini bonds that reflected that, the loan into the company effectively, that gave them a lot of cash up front. Okay, we are lending against the asset value of the site when that gets purchased, okay, at a prudent LTV level, right? They are then cracking on and doing work, okay, and the end of each month or 6 weeks or 7 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever the period that they're requesting drawdowns on, we will go and assess the amount of work they've done and effectively the value that, or the cost that is incurred, and we will release that to them in arrears to that work and that progress being completed, right? And we will be very scrutinous of that. We've seen examples where, you know, a kitchen turns up on site 6-8 weeks before it's due to be installed. Well, that could get stolen, right? So we're not releasing funds against that. We've seen our monitoring surveyors have seen, like, you know, windows being put in at the front, and then they walk around the back and there's no windows in the back because they haven't arrived yet and they've claimed for all the windows. You know, this is, you've got to be all over this. And that's why property expertise is so fundamentally important in this sector, the asset class expertise piece. So there was quite a superficial look at saying, actually, doesn't that look like that? And no, it's fundamentally different. You know, this is very reflective of the traditional development finance market. We're not doing anything more funky than that or more risky than that. This is good, solid, asset-backed, asset-secured lending against either the asset or the progress and the spend that has been undertaken.
Okay. Good answer too, by the way. What is your thoughts on institution money? We've seen a lot of peer-to-peer lending companies go towards institution money, cut off the retail side. David Lightly says you've said you are now getting some funding, maybe from JP Morgan. Is that correct? And is it possible you'll lose interest in the retail peer-to-peer funding side?
So we have a couple of institutions on our platform. There will probably be some new news on this coming out soon. But we are absolutely 100% committed to retail investors on our platform. Okay, and we think about that in the structures of our institutional lending agreements as well. That is a core part of our strategy. We are not walking away from that. We know that some people have. Okay. Now, what does institutional capital bring? Right. The two partners we currently have spent months crawling all over our business. Okay, and they looked at it and they said, these guys are top notch. We're going to put a lot of money through them, right? And what might come out soon in the news has been months and months and months and months and months and months of due diligence, right? This is validation of all development market and all the property bridging market, etc. Okay, these major asset managers with big pools of cash that mitigate risk all over the shop, they come and they choose us, right? And that's after so much scrutiny. Okay, and they see powerful differentiators about our route to market, about the quality we are securing, our track record, our expertise, and our ability to ultimately get these loans redeemed. This is a good thing, right? Because you're alongside these guys, right, that have by definition been able to spend more time and more resource due diligencing us, right? Now, bigger picture. So that's the sort of the short-term benefit of saying, right, great, okay, I've got more comfort that someone's looked hard and prodded this business hard, right? In the medium term, right, this drives, a higher credibility lender. They're picking the best lenders, right? It drives higher credibility and it drives borrowers towards our platform, right? So we will find more projects as a result. So this is not institutions pushing retail investors out, right? This is institutions giving platforms more firepower to be able to find more loans and attract more loans, ultimately building a far bigger lender, okay, that still has, it may be percentage wise they're taking more, but because it's larger, it's still a big portion of pie to go after. The pie is much bigger. So that is our commitment. Okay, our commitment is absolutely to retail platform lenders. Okay, our other clear statement is that we are bringing on more institutional capital. Okay, that is a good thing because it's hard and they back the best guys. But this is part of the evolution of the sector. Okay, and look, they're choosing us over putting money into other lending opportunities.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing when you see institutional investors coming on board, because they do a hell of a lot of due diligence in some cases. Sometimes they get it wrong. So I think that's kind of a little pat on the back for what you've built. And if you're able to attract institution money, I don't see that as necessarily a bad thing.
Yep.
Let's see. We already answered this. Albert Adams said, "What is the difference between the borrower and lender rate?" Albert, it's around 2%, as the spread tends to be. It's on the statistics page. If you want to just Google Crowdproperty and statistics, you'll see the average rates over the year and how they've changed. John Day said, "Does the pledge download always reflect the latest date information if a loan has started late?" Do you understand that question?
Presumably pledge download data on our individual account pages, because you can download various things. So you can download transaction data, you can download pledge data. I'd have to check that for you. It should be real time because the data is there to support that, and the tech is there to support that. So maybe that's a quick question for one of our lender services team, and they'll know that off the top of their head.
So email maybe John or call up and ask them that. Okay, and I think this is a good question, and this is something that I want to address for people that are sort of newer investors or maybe are a little bit have been burnt by some of the other companies. We're going to talk about a comment from somebody here that said he's lost tens of thousands of pounds to a platform collapse. What's the likelihood of Crowdproperty also going into administration like so many of those other peer-to-peer platforms have that we've had our money invested into?
Yeah, we're a profitable platform. And that we know how the economics work. We spend so much of our time really understanding economics. There's for those of you who know venture capital and private equity space, the way to look at it is this thing called unit economics, right? Can you optimize your cost of acquisition? Okay, so the amount you pay to acquire a lender or a borrower. Okay, optimize that through learning, through data, through analytics, through everything, and drive that down to ensure that your customer lifetime value of that lender or that borrower is higher. Okay, that's fundamental sort of unit economics, right? And because I sort of come from that world, and I'm so obsessed by this, and so we've worked so hard at it, had so much analytical resource at it, and we've done brilliantly. The performance of bringing down our cost of acquisition is incredible, and that's one of the things that's behind our profitability. The other thing that's behind our profitability is reaching sufficient scale. The thing that scares the living daylights out of me is small platforms that are under-resourced, under pressure to shove money out the door, and that for me is a danger area. So there's sort of a mix here of does the platform get it, these sort of fundamentals, especially around unit economics? Is the business profitable? Is the governance and processes and the challenge there at the board level? And I'm always challenged by our chairman and non-exec, and it's brilliant. It's great because I learn, I evolve, and we as a business are ever better based on a lot of thought and experience going into that. What else is there? Understand the sort of the other element of business economics is, obviously there's a level of income that comes in. That cost base is inefficient. Ours is. It's non-London. Again, it would cost me twice as much to run the business I have and the resource I have in central London. you need to take a look at people's accounts as well. There's some staggering accrued losses in platforms. Can they really make it work? So look, we are a very, very stable platform, and we are all over this. All our forecasting in the business is board level discussion on cash position, cash forecast, P&L, etc. Very scrutinized and very well put together. And anything else on this to consider? So the other thing that the FCA are looking at the moment is wind down plans of platforms, because if something goes into administration and fails, okay, is there cash in the business that enables an orderly wind down of that book? Okay, so this is the other thing to think about, and what we have is we have a cash flow structure where we get an arrangement fee up front, and we get the difference between the borrower rate and the lender rate at the end, right? And that's important actually, because that means that we haven't got all the cash in early, right? And if we didn't make it work, there's no cash then around and forward cash flow stream to fund the orderly wind down of that book. Mm-hmm. Whereas because of that two front and end cash flow structure, there's always cash to wind down the book. And we've worked very closely with both our internal finance team, but also our external accounting advisors to get that right and get that clearly justified. And the FCA really like that structure. It's really well thought through. And it's robust in disaster scenarios. And look, we talk through these things a lot. Okay, not because we think it's going to happen. It's because we've got a risk committee. It's a risk management item, mm-hmm. and it's important to talk through and make sure we are mitigating all of these factors.
Yeah. One of the things too that I've seen with these administrations too is the amount of money that's been drained out by the administrative fees. Has been ridiculous. If you look at the Lendy case, we're talking about over it was £3.7 million in administration fees, and you just scratching your head, well, how can investors get money back when the administrators are just completely milking the recovery process with their fees? And I think there needs to be some caps on those type of things, but whether that will happen is questionable.
I could go into a lot here, but I'm going to resist. I'm not going to.
That was more of a comment than a question. But it's one of those things. So I've got a couple of. I just want you to give me a thumbs up and a thumbs down, okay? I'm going to ask you the 4 things that has been on my mind today. I don't know why they just popped into my head. Okay, you ready? Okay.
Go.
Pork pies.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Okay. Bitcoin.
For me, thumbs down.
Okay. Tetley tea.
It's okay. I'm a coffee man. I'll say thumbs down, but it's not because I don't like it.
All right. Index trackers for your regular investor on the stock market.
I'm going to say thumbs up. With the caveat there for regular investors, it's a diversified play by definition. I don't personally. I invest in various different things, including having capital on Crowdproperty.
There you go. Those are good answers. I disagree with the pork pies. I've never been a fan, and I definitely disagree with the Bitcoin. But that will all play out in the future. So,
hey, look, if I'm proven wrong on that, that's fine. But it's not for me.
Well, as a business owner, you are going to be invested heavily inside of your business, and that would make a lot of sense. Okay, I think we got through nearly all the questions. We've been on for an hour and 40 minutes. So I don't want to keep you here forever. For everybody watching, if you want to stick around at the end, and we're going to do a little bit of a cryptocurrency wrap up at the end. You have competition in this space, albeit it's gotten smaller. But tell me what you think is the pitch for people coming on board Crowd Property than maybe if they're considering that you're competitors. Give me a quick couple of minutes on why they want to come and invest through you versus somebody else.
Deep asset class expertise. We've been there, we've done that. The three founders have 75 years of property investing and development experience. We've been on sites, we've built stuff, we've seen this at the grassroots level. We fundamentally understand risk with such. It's absolutely imperative in lending. You know, it's lending, whatever it is, whether it's peer-to-peer lending, bank lending, or whatever. It's not about how you wire up some tech to enable it. Okay, that is a support for it. Okay, you need to have the deep asset class expertise. Okay, number one. Number two, you need great resourcing in that business to really understand that and deliver that brilliantly. Our team of 44 that's growing, we resource this well, and that's because we have a fundamental cost advantage as well. I would look at those things in terms of the fundamentals. Look into the people. It's the people understanding this, you know, especially in property development lending, right? It's you've got to have expert human brains. Mm-hmm. And then look, ultimately, look at the data, understand the gap between borrower and lender rates. Look at the track record. How long these guys been around for? How much have they done? How much have they paid back? How much experience have they had? Because if they've paid back a lot, like we have, there's been some difficult stuff, right? And have they delivered on that? Look into the stats. I would summarize as that. That's what's very, very important in our thinking and our planning and our strategy.
Very good. Very good. Well, listen, Mike, there you have it, everybody. Michael Bristow, CEO of Crowdproperty. Thank you so much for spending the time giving us all this transparent information. That's what I like most about you. You're not afraid to put it all out there and show what you're really about, which is what we need right now in the industry. I've put the link if people want to sign up. You can also go to the financialthing.com website. Under the cashback page, there's a link there, Crowd Property, to sign up. And give them a try and poke around, see what you think. And hopefully we'll have you back on in the future, sort of see where you are, see where the industry is, and have another chat in the future.
Yeah, brilliant. And look, Lawrence, as always, thank you. And do continue to feedback, everyone. We do listen, we do take it on board, and we do map it into our roadmap. But we are working hard at bringing you more high quality projects. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Okay, Mike, we will talk to you later, and thanks for coming on and doing this again.
Take care. See you soon.
Bye.
Cheers.
So there you have it. That was Michael Bristow. Always have a good chat with him. He is, I just love people in the industry are willing just to tell us the way it is. And, you know, obviously he has a lot of knowledge. He's very experienced in what he does. And I like the background there that it is about the experience of him having that property development experience and the other people that are involved in Crowd Property the same, which is why I appreciate them. We're going to do a quick wrap up. I want to show you what's going on with the Trading 212 portfolio, because you know this portfolio continues to do well. For anybody that doesn't know, this was a £5,500 investment project in picking individual stocks and shares. We've done some UK, we've done some US, and I'm just going to show you what's going on with it. We are up to right now 16,804 pounds, which is crazy. You know, I mean, we're talking about a tripling of the portfolio, and we've just had a couple of stocks in this portfolio that have really propped up, and I'm going to show you what's going on here. This is the Laredo Petroleum play. Up 245%. I said before, you know, when I entered into this trade that I thought oil and energy stocks were going to be the play. But you know that this is the problem with picking out individual stocks. You know, even though I think energy and oil is going to be the way forward, you can see right here Centrus Energy, which I picked out, has actually in the red of 3%, whereas you've got one oil play with Laredo which is up 245%. And this presents the difficulty of picking out the correct stocks when you're doing it this way. I have a very undiversified portfolio that if I'd have, for instance, shoved a bunch of money into this Microvision stock at 24% in the red, I would be hurting on this portfolio. And you can see the two big ones here, Bonanza Creek Energy 18% up, and the big one, Laredo. And now here comes the other decision, is when do we exit this trade? When do we say enough is enough? We've made 245% on the trade. Pull back. In my gut, I think that the Laredo will still continue to go higher, but there's always that emotional pull of knowing when the right time to exit is. You can see we came in at $27.57. That was our opening price of £20 and 11p. And now today we closed out at $95. So we're tapping on that 100 US dollar play. And I know somebody in the chat had also said, how do we make $1 million, right? That's what we want to do. You can just take massive risks. There was another stock that I have in a different trading account called Intellia Therapeutics. If you want to see what I invest in, you can go to the Financial Thing website and look at where I invest. But I totally missed this one. There was somebody told me last week to buy into Intellia in a heavier position on Friday, and I had money in my trading account to do this, and I completely just forgot to do it. And what happened, you can see here, the price actually went from 88 US dollars on Friday. It closed out at 88, and we saw this thing go up to $198 in just 2 days, which is again is the insanity of trying to time the market and trying to pick out individual shares. I mean, it's a 100% increase in less than 3 days. And you can take big risks like that and try to hit home runs on these meme shares and these AMCs and this Intellia play, but it's not a good way to have a diverse portfolio. And I can tell you that if we were running in a bear market right now, that this portfolio, who knows where it would be. It would probably likely be in some trouble. But we just happen to be on this bull market run, and some of these stocks have really returned well. So yeah, if you are looking to ways to make a ton of money in the stock market, gambling on these individual shares is a gamble. I mean, you can do your research, do your due diligence, but at the end of the day, we really don't know what these stock prices are going to do. But that was one big missed out opportunity on the NTLA. But again, we're going to give away a portion of these profits on this portfolio to charity. And I'm excited. The bigger the portfolio gets, the more I'm going to be able to give away of the portfolio. And it's done really well. We'll take a quick look at what's going on in the cryptocurrency market. Again, we're just seeing this Bitcoin price trade sort of sideways. There's a lot of news coming out about China and how bad that is that they're clamping down on the mining. I personally think that's a really good thing. I think that what's going to happen is these Chinese miners are going to move out to different countries anyways and start mining again. But what it does is it just redistributes the mining possibilities out to other miners in different countries. And once all this news settled down, you're going to see this Bitcoin price start to turn higher. One other thing I wanted to mention too, these prices of what Bitcoin is worth is based on the OTC markets, which are the over-the-counter markets, where there is actually only a small proportion of all of the Bitcoin in circulation on these platforms. I think the number is around the mid 2 million circulation of Bitcoin, which right now you can see over here we're at 18.7 million in circulation. Yes, some of those have been lost for people that have lost passwords and things like that. A lot of them are being held in cold storage wallets, which means they're being held very long term. So you don't see a lot of these coins coming onto the market for liquidity. So this price right here doesn't always accurately reflect really what Bitcoin is worth. It's Bitcoin about what we can buy and sell for today, but it doesn't mean necessarily that this is what the price of these Bitcoins are worth. Same with all the other cryptocurrencies. But we're still in this down pattern. I still think it's a good time to be able to buy, in my personal opinion. Again, not financial advice. And I still expect towards the end of the year you will start to see this price really take off once some of these news stories really get put to bed. Some of these fake news stories that are coming out. There was an interesting story here about what's going on in Germany. Germany has allowed 4,000 investment funds to invest up to 20% of their capital into cryptocurrency. Obviously, institutions are really looking at cryptocurrency now as valid ways to invest money. So as more and more institutions come in and start buying up the Bitcoin, it's becoming more and more scarce. We've only got another less than 3 million to be mined, and scarcity is going to become a real thing, and that will drive the price up in the future. We haven't seen it yet, but and we probably won't see it in our lifetime as the mining rates start to decrease, as the amount of new crypto and Bitcoin starts to come out on the market, as it halves every 4 years. But will become less and less. There'll just become less Bitcoin out there to buy in the future, and this is really going to affect the price. So again, not really much going on in the crypto markets. We've just seen some really up and down fluctuations. But if you're a long-term believer in things like Bitcoin, buy and holding is the best strategy. Trading is not. To me, the best strategy to do with this stuff are way too volatile. I'm sure there are people that are making money doing that, but you can also really get your rear end handed to you when markets are bad and when they drop 30 or 40%, which can absolutely happen still. So anyway, we've been on for way too long today. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. And we will see you next Thursday at the same time, 7:30 p.m. If you can subscribe to the channel, please. We are slowly inching towards that 1,000 subscriber mark that we had on the old channel, which YouTube decided to take down. But we rebuild and start from zero. Thank you to everybody for joining. If you have questions or comments, put them on the archive video that will be popping up soon. And thanks again. Yeah, thanks again. And we'll see you next Thursday for another live stream. Take care. Have a great weekend. Enjoy.